So this morning we got the banners. There's actually a reason to summon on the Nilo Navia banner. All right, so let's talk about it because there's actually a reason. Regarding the 5-star weapons that you don't get a choice in, who can the Claymore be used on? Claymore is fully universal and anyone can use it because there's a 20% attack passive that doesn't have any conditions whatsoever. So if you're looking for a 674 base 20% attack weapon, that's pretty damn good. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more than that, the only characters that can utilize Claymore are going to be characters that are Claymore characters that have a Geo character on the team. So Navia's weapon is okay, but looking at the weapons coming out from Fontaine, Navia's weapon is basically for drip, but you don't even get to see it very often for the Gunbarella. So I don't feel like the Navia weapon is worth at all, because even though it's a Claymore that we can look into, the next Claymore that we're going to get is going to be much better from what I can tell. The reason I think the next Claymore is going to be much better is because we're starting to see weapons become more generalized for full kits. And we're starting to see less very hyper specialized weapons. We kind of saw it with Arlecchino's weapon. We saw it with Clarin's weapon. We're seeing it with Emily's weapon. So we're seeing a lot less like super specialized weapons and seeing much more generalized 5-star weapons. So this might be the year of being able to see weapons that we can actually use with like any character. So they just might be tied to a reaction type or a specialized playstyle. But we'll see if they make them very, very, very unique to the character or not. As far as the Key of Khaj-Nisut goes, I'd say the Key of Khaj-Nisut is not a great weapon to pull for. The only reason I don't feel like the Key of Khaj-Nisut is really good to pull for is the last time the Key of Khaj-Nisut was on a banner, it was paired with Nakida's weapon. So it's very similar to this situation, right? Where we got the banners that are paired like with 2 5-star weapons and a Z-Suit displays that we kind of want. I've had it for a long time on Farina. I really like it on my Farina. I've had it for a long time on Kuki. It's a really good weapon on Kuki. And I've had it for a long time on Nilo. However, when I remove the weapon from my characters and then I decide play them, I don't notice too much of a difference. It is a nice add, but the supporting weapon of EM, ever since we've kind of moved away from Dendro teams, hasn't really been super great, but it might come back again with freeze melt teams. I haven't really found this weapon to be super good outside of freeze melt. When I try it with that, it's great. When I try it on a positive vape team with Farina, it's great. But if I don't try it on those teams, not a huge fan. There's also a bigger difference between the Splendor of Tranquil Waters versus the Key of Khaj-Nisut when it comes to a Sijuan team too. So I've noticed a much bigger difference on that particular team because of like the Sijuan basically becoming HP. So when it comes to the weapon banner itself, the weapon banner does not seem like it's worth, but if you really wanted both of those weapons for your Navia and Nilo, and you also wanted to try to get a Zepho split at the same time, sure. I obviously can't touch it because I have 2 Key of Khaj-Nisuts already on my free-to-play on my BV Welcome account, so I can't even touch it. All right, and then back to the character banner. Why is the character banner an easy skip? If we look at every character on the character banner, the only character that even has some future potential for newer teams is Kirara. Okay, Kirara is the only one that has any real, like, oh, you could use that, I guess, because she's the only shielder in the mix. She's the only Dendro shielder that even exists, pretty much. So when it comes to Nilo, is Nilo a good option? We've talked about this over the past, like, few weeks. Nilo isn't a good option anymore. What we've seen from enemies in Genshin Impact is that Nilo is really good versus one type of melee enemy and very bad against 2 different types of enemies. The first type of enemy that Nilo is really bad on is ranged DPS when they spawn in segmented patterns. So like, let's just say we're fighting 2 Pyro Fatui and they're the Gunner Pyro Fatui and they're like spread out. Well, you can make them jump into each other, right? And then you could kill them. But you would have to get on opposite sides of them and push them into each other, right? So that's annoying to do in the first place, which kind of sucks. But if you do that, they're always going to be backpedaling away from you. And any enemy that's going to backpedal away from you, Nilo is really bad at. The type of enemy Nilo is really good at is enemies that chase you down and push you and attack you and then come right to you. So she's really good on those. But enemies that kind of like circle around you or backpedal out, she's really bad on. It's not mainly her DPS that's a problem. It's more so the enemy positioning that kind of like cucks the character, if anything. Now she can still do everything, as a skill issue portion, but if you don't want to do skill issue nonsense, then I think her viability is on a decline, and I do not think you should be going for Nilo in per se. When it comes to Kave and Nilo, Kave and Nilo is absolute dog shit. She's amazing against Doggo. Yeah, she's really good against the Geo Doggos, the Electro Doggos that like come at you, because they're gonna constantly be coming at you and they're not gonna move, right? So she's really bad against smaller enemies. The same thing is actually surprisingly true of Navia. Navia is really good against large enemies, but really bad against small enemies. Navia is a very strong character that I like, but her biggest flaw is enemy hitboxes. You see this giant square in front of me? The bullets don't just land anywhere in the square. They cone out like a shotgun. So the problem is, if you look at this, you can see that in this square, they're gonna cone out and they go every direction. So if an enemy is super small in front of you, I'm just like use this guy right here as an example. You can see where the bullets go, right? So that's a problem for the character. Can't hold the E. However, if you tap the E, a lot of times the shotgun pellets will all hit. But you can never hold the E, but you need to hold the E to drag the crystallizers in every so often. So there is a problem with the size of the enemy versus the damage that you're going to do. And the damage that Navia deals is not based on one of the projectiles hitting, it's based on every projectile hitting. So the more projectiles that hit an enemy, the more your damage goes up on that singular hit. That's the major problem with Navia, is enemy hitboxes. Is it fixable? Is there a way around it? You can try grouping them and then getting them all in one spot and then positioning for a big shot. That's doable, but it's a bit problematic. So you have to be very close to the enemy, like really on them to even get the full hit. So when it comes to Navia, I wouldn't recommend her to a large percentage of players at this stage of the game. Not because she's a bad character, but because we have other Geo characters coming. If there was no Geo characters coming, then I would recommend her. The other problem is with Navia that since I have both Ito and Navia on my BP Welcome account, I almost always gravitate toward Ito. I thought I would almost always gravitate toward Navia, but it would happen because Chiori requires a Geo construct. I almost always gravitate toward Ito. Now, if I had C1 Chiori, then that would be a completely different story. But because I have C0 Chiori, I always gravitate toward Ito. So this is a C0 Navia, by the way, this with a Serpent Spine. So no stacks on her shit. This is what you get, like 70k hits for no stack on Crystal Ice. So she has like good front-loaded damage with the Serpent Spine, but you need to have some kind of consistent application of Geo to make sure that you get your Crystal Ice stacks up. And see, I don't have any, so I can now pop the burst. Get a little bit more in here. You can see on a bigger enemy, there's not really a problem, but she has a range issue, as you can kind of see here too. So now we're gonna go to a small enemy. So this guy is like not a small enemy. I'd say he's like a medium-sized enemy. But we'll just look at the hitbox here, and we'll watch to see if there's an issue. So on the, if you just tap E, not really an issue. Tap E, no issue. Okay, dropping a Zhangling burst here. Okay, I'm gonna do a hold E. No issue. But that guy, that's the size of the enemy. That's for the distancing you need for the damage. Okay? If they're any smaller than that, you're fucked. On Raiden Shogun boss fight, you're fucked. For hitbox, it's fucking weird, man. Without signature weapon, as you can see, with no Bennett buff, damage falls off like crazy. Okay? Signature weapon provides a very large amount of attack, so a lot of people think that they can just make up the damage with a Bennett buff. On this team in particular, you kind of can, but What I found is that the Bennett buff is like really annoying to play around at times, but it is what you can do. Okay? As far as the character goes though, with the Serpent Spine, it's not incredible. It's not broken. Big numbers every so often, but they're not broken.
Afraid? Or do you not even have the courage to be afraid? Is it my turn?
Oh, did we do that? Fuck.
Now that's more like it. With the fall of darkness, destruction shall rise. Have a taste of purgatory.
So here's the team with Sigewin. It's pretty tanky, which is nice.
Running is a blue.
So you don't really take too much damage, even with Serpent Spine. Blows through with decent damage, no real major issue on the team because of, you know, Geo characters and Geo resonance. Okay, so we're in.
My blade is all that remains. Suntown is only the beginning.
So that's a team with the C0 Chiori, but with the C1 Chiori, the damage goes whoop. So as the team goes, yeah, it's a pretty decent team, but I like the Ito version way better.